Hello and welcome to Completely Machinima, the podcast about machinima, virtual production, and related technologies. My name's Phil, and I'm here with my co-hosts Damien, Ricky, and Tracy.
Hello.
Welcome to you.
Hello.
Hey.
So we've got a great pick to discuss this week, and this is one by Tracy, and it's called Heroes of Bronze. And I'll just start by saying, Tracy, that for those of you who don't know, on the show we have an electronic bulletin board, basically, that this is how we gather together the information for the show and stuff. And when I first saw what was Tracy's pick, she had posted the trailer and then the film. And I at first thought that the trailer, which runs, I don't know, what is it, 20 seconds?
Yeah.
At first I thought that was the pick. And I was very confused. But then I scrolled down and realized what was happening. So tell us about this this interesting find.
You got a double hit then.
Yeah.
Heroes of Bronze. This one is called The Memory, and it's by Martin Klekner, and it was released on the 21st of January. So by the time it hits our channel, it'll be a couple of months into its run, if you like. Now, it's the first main film release by Martin from his really quite long-awaited project, in which he's attempting to use a variety of different media, from these short films to written stories and paintings. And what he's trying to do is rebuild this Greco-Persian War period of time, using as much historically accurate information as he can in the process. Now, he's using iClone and Blender in his pipeline, and he's also using Rococo for his mocap. And we first highlighted that this project was coming our way last April. So it's quite a long wait for us to see this actually having been released. So it really is quite cool to see it out. Now, this particular one he's calling it a proof of concept short film. And it's set in ancient Greece, showcasing this time between these two quite famous battles, Marathon being one, which was 1490 BC, and Plataea, excuse my Greek, which was fought in 479 BC. So it's a battle between those two great battles that we probably have heard more about, if you like. Now, the film is basically an introduction to a bigger animated project, which he's already currently pre-producing. So over the next year, he's going to be releasing more, with the second film in this series planned for the autumn. And just to let you know, this isn't just from last April time, or whenever it was we first highlighted it, but this is actually a project that's taken 4 years to get to this stage. 4 years. And you can kind of see how he's developing the project on his YouTube channel, but he's also got a website on which it's very well worth looking at the content that he's putting on his website as well. And the way that he's paying for himself to do all of this content, he's a one-man band basically, is he's running it out of Patreon. He's got umpteen followers on Patreon, and that is allowing him to produce tutorials, which is basically what's paying for him to do the creative work. So if you really enjoy this, then it's definitely worth supporting him for not very many bucks a month. Now, there's a really detailed accompanying description of the story on the website for this particular episode, along with historical notes that he's used to inform the decisions that he's made about the story. But actually, I wanted to experience this as a standalone film. And in some respects, it's actually a little hard to follow as a film without the background content on the website, which explains the story. And that includes the time period, for example, because you may be more familiar with other battles of that period of time, such as Thermopylae from the film 300 and various other things. You're probably a little bit more familiar with those. Also, the names and the details and the way that the armor works, and how that's been created. All of that is detailed on his website, but it's just sort of You get just a passing glimpse of it in the film. It's told through the memories of this particular war hero's wife. It's narrated as thoughts rather than as spoken words to her son. And she's basically reflecting on this boy's deep attraction to his father's armor, which sort of stands in this room that he visits clearly quite frequently. Now, the film's action is really quite fast paced. There's many, many different scenes. They seem to be just presented as samplers of this former soldier's life. And I think really what stitches the whole thing together for me is actually this really haunting music, which just seems to bind it all, because there's scene after scene after scene after scene, which is an interesting approach. But the music, I think, then becomes very important. It's not necessarily, I mean, you don't necessarily understand all the material that's gone into the making of the film, which I think is a kind of an interesting approach. I think it's also quite interesting because once you understand how much effort has gone into the historical recreation of this, and then you also pick up something like, for example, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is thematically very similar, telling a story of the 300 Spartan, heroes' fall at Thermopylae, which took place about the same sort of time. You're kind of wondering, where the differences might be, and it's for that reason I think it's probably worth reflecting on the animation style too, because what you're getting in this film isn't the same as what you might get in that Assassin's Creed version at all. The animation doesn't hold in the same way as it does in that AAA version, if you like. It's more stylized. It's definitely not Unreal metahuman type stuff that you're looking at. There's emphasis on just a few components of it being more realistically done. For example, you see some of the soldiers running, and you see the way that they're running, and that's really quite detailed. Some of the detail on the armor is some of the detail on the armor is really very impressive as well. But some of the skin looks a little bit plastic, and in parts it kind of reminded me a little bit of do you remember Harryhausen's animations of Talos in Jason and the Argonauts? That was a little bit like that for me in places. And I suspect what's happened here is probably a function of the focus of Martin's work, which is really on the historical representation of the artifacts, which are highlighted throughout, more perhaps than actually on the storytelling per se. But overall, I have to say this was an outstanding indie creative project, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I know I've picked up on a few little bits and pieces, but be really interested to hear what you guys have got to say about it.
Well, I thought it was a beautiful and a moving film that was pretty close to perfect. I had no problems following the plot, even though I didn't know anything about the background on his website. I understood it. Every detail was just good. The voiceover, the pacing, the camera work, the animation, skin, maybe you could say, but then again, that's iClone has always had a little bit of a problem with skin textures, although they're really getting better at it, but that was a tiny bit. The music, you're absolutely right. It was flawless. I loved it. I just thought it was marvelous. It shows how machinima can be a short form film format to par excellence and compete against Pixar and other companies that produce long form stuff. Now, they have a team of people working on one thing for a week, whereas Martin was one guy doing something. Now, his 4-year odyssey in putting this together perhaps might be a bit antithetical to the machinima, the idea of machinima. He seems to be working along the more professional lines of I've got to get this right. It's got to get this. I think perhaps he could have spent less time on some of the details and it still would have been effective. But then again, that's just his way of making films. My only issue with the film at all, and anyway, and I honestly was moved and touched by it, was the sort of fight for what you believe in theme at the end. That's so American and so modern. And in many ways, although many people believe that, I think our modern era of two world wars and the Holocaust and continuing horrifying war in the Ukraine might argue against that notion, might be a little sentimental. But I think most people won't care about that. But it did bother me just a little bit. But I loved it. Wonderful choices.
It bothered
I-
me a little bit too, Ricky, believe it or not. Yeah. Because
Did it?
I just that part of it, the because everybody in World War II, every major power involved in World War II were fighting for what they believed in.
Exactly.
Every single one. So yeah, I think that doesn't hold up too well. And I think you're right, Ricky. I think it's this past century is really what taught us that better than any other. That aside, though, yeah, I enjoyed this very much. A lot of the historical detail, honestly, is just not something that I'm qualified to spot. So I don't know how to evaluate it through that lens. That with maybe one exception is I have done a fair bit of research into architecture from that period, the way cities are structured and such, for a project that I'm planning for the future, and was really impressed with. They were very brief shots, of course, but some of those shots that showed the settlements and villages and stuff, and the way that the walls were set and all of this. The colors, I wasn't sure how to judge. Some of the colors seemed almost impossibly vibrant, but who knows? If that's the way they were, that's the way they were. But as far as the actual structure, it was impressively in alignment with real historical research that I've done. So that was something that kind of hooked me on the first viewing of it. Was okay, somebody's paying attention to something here. Yeah, I found it, I don't want to say heartwarming. That's the wrong, that's too sentimental a term, but it was moving. The story was definitely moving. And wonderfully encapsulates, I think, the whole notion of war and soldiers in the context of generations, and that there tends to be this amongst the young, this overglorified notion of what being a soldier is versus the reality of the brutality and low survival rate. And it's hard, but to a young man who just, here's the legacy of his father, and well, I want to be that too. That's real. That's not just something that happened back then. That's something that still happens now,
Yes.
And so I liked the respectful treatment of that, and the mother kind of serving as this figure uniquely positioned to see both of those things. She knows through her husband the real horrors of war, and also knows her son. So what she must have been feeling as he's yearning to follow in the footsteps was it got me thinking about those things. It's nice, it's not terribly unusual for a professionally made TV show or movie to succeed in getting you to think about real things like that. It's fairly unusual for a machinima film to do so. And this short little film did that.
Sure did.
So regardless of technological pluses and minuses that it had, ultimately that's what really impressed me the most about this film, was that he knows how to do that, because that's not easy to do. People
Nope.
can sniff a fake with that miles away. So there's something authentic and genuine to the spirit of the filmmaker when they succeed in bringing that through. So to me, that may be his biggest strength, in spite of all the clearly technological expertise he's developed in making machinima with iClone and with these other tools. And I mean, he's got a Rococo suit, for crying out loud. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Not just that he, came up with the budget to do that, but then also you have to learn how to use it properly as well, and then
Right.
learn how to clean up the mocap to get it to be something usable. It's a whole thing, a whole
Yeah.
scene. So all that's very impressive, but what really struck me was his ability to move me. Because I'm not a sap, I'm not easily triggered like that, but this made me think and feel. And for me, that's the biggest reason that I hope he keeps going. And I
Right.
hope that
So,
his funding model works for him to
and
where he
unlike
can
the
continue this.
TikTok videos that I shared,
Well, they made me feel something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they
But
made me feel
in another
something.
part of your anatomy, perhaps.
Little, yeah, to the south. Yes. Yeah,
So
I just wanted to clarify that.
I appreciate that. No,
I-
great pick. Damien, what about you?
I can't comment on the historical accuracy either, but based on what Tracy said about all the details on the website, I imagine it is as accurate as it could be. And I've got a friend who's very knowledgeable on sort of ancient Greeks, and I really want to show this to her, and I haven't had a chance to do it before we recorded because I'd be really interested to hear what she had to say about it.
Yeah.
You've already talked about the story. I want to talk a bit more the technical side of things. There are some really epic scale shots there with big armies, thousands of troops, and
Yes.
ships at sea. And initially we see iClone characters, and you can look at a machinima and you get a good idea of what created the character just from the look of the way it is, and it's just something about the way they look. You can tell instantly what it's from, and I could tell this is iClone characters. That's not a criticism or anything like that. It's just you just know when you look. And I thought, okay, this is obviously made with iClone. Maybe rendered with Unreal or something, because I didn't look at the description until later. And then you got to some of the shots. Thought, how did he do that with iClone? Because if I tried to do that with iClone, it would probably crash.
I thought the same thing, Damien. I really did.
Especially that shot with thousands and thousands of soldiers charging each other. I thought, I don't know. And then I read the description after. Okay, it's rendered in Blender, so he probably did it in layers and put it all into Blender, which could probably handle that. But still, that's a huge amount of work to do. I can see why maybe it would take 4 years to just animate all of that. And it's not just animating the characters; it's the detail as well. Like when they're running, the dust is flying up behind them because it would.
Right.
And there's little subtle things like the fabric on their clothes is wafting gently in the wind, even not just in the obvious ways, like the mother's got a dress and obviously that's going to float around, but the little boy, he's got a sleeveless shirt on, and just sort of here you can see it just wafting a little bit as he's moving around. And that's the kind of detail that isn't necessary. You don't really need to do it unless you really want everything to be perfect. And I can't imagine how long it would have taken to figure out just how to get those little details in and to put them in. Or did he animate that by hand, or did he have to do the soft cloth fabric techniques? And of course, figuring out all the little details for that's a huge amount of work. And I really admire everything that all that time and energy he's put into this. I feel a little bad that I can't comment on the historical accuracy, because that's obviously something that he's very passionate about. But the technical side of things, I really stunned by, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next chapter of this story.
Yeah.
And see what else you can do. And it's also inspiring me as well. I thought I need to step up my game a little bit, because I'm obviously using some very similar software to him. And I think that's the highest praise I can offer, is you make me want to do better.
That's fantastic.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
Very interesting comments. Thank you.
Sure.
I guess, I suppose the only thing is, because I found the basically the trailer for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and the content is so similar in terms of the scenes the shots, the big, the armies running at one another, the battle scenes and all the rest of it. And I was thinking that, this one person has created something that looks something that a AAA has created. Just
Exactly.
looks.
And who probably used 3D Studio Max to create the cutscenes.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the assets from the game.
Absolutely.
And he was just using us over-the-counter software that's affordable and that a lot of people use.
Yeah. And I also don't know too much about the historical accuracy of it at all. But what I can say is that quite a lot of the comments on his YouTube channel seem to be from people that do know about the historical context. And I think that's his primary target audience for this. It's the history, the archaeological folks, the folks that report on the detail side of things. And
it makes sense too, because I mean, there are certain periods in history, in human history, that haven't gotten a lot of screen time in the world of cinema as far as realistic portrayals. There's been plenty of stylized portrayals.
Yes.
The 300 movie.
Yes.
There was a series. This is not really that same time period. It's early 80s, but there was a series on Stars called Spartacus that was, but just a highly stylized telling of the gladiator age, during Rome and stuff like that. There was a great series on HBO a decade or more ago called Rome, ran for 2 seasons.
Great
that
series.
was wonderful. That's worth a rewatch if you've got HBO Max. But pre-AD, Bronze Age, there haven't even I don't know, I guess it's, we're a fickle mob, aren't we? So they make films about what people are interested in. And there's a dime a dozen World War II flicks.
Yeah.
But there's these other eras that are, and I'm very fascinated by that era, that it's not prehistory, but it's, ancient times that are fairly well documented.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen them portrayed. And with all the technology and abilities that we've got nowadays, it's kind of a shame. I mean, maybe the History Channel's doing this and I just don't watch it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But frankly, this, to me, from what little I have seen of like dramatic animated reenactments on the History Channel, this is right up there with that, like maybe better, So my hat's off to him. I'm glad he's filling a gap in because storytelling is important, not just fictional storytelling, but, telling and retelling of history is important because there's still stuff to be learned from it. So I really hope he does succeed in his quest here.
I was thinking after I watched the movie and I was mulling over my reactions to it, Hugh Hancock came to my mind, and I was thinking, boy, if he was alive today and saw this movie, he'd be jumping up and down.
Yeah.
He'd be so happy with because he loves those large, massive scenes. He loves that epic scope. This is exactly what he envisioned that machinima could do, was the single filmmaker creating what you can do in Hollywood for millions and millions of dollars.
Oh, and the Machinima for Dummies book that he wrote with Johnny Ingram, they devoted a whole section of chapters to making movies with, I can't remember what the name of the game is now, but it was with a game that supported these large scale battle environments.
That's right.
What was it called?
Total War.
Yeah.
There's a whole series of those games, and they're all different time periods. And I think there was one in sort of ancient Greece.
Yeah, I was the technical editor on that book, so I got kind of an insight when they were planning it. And I remember when he picked that, I was like, "What are you thinking? Nobody makes stuff with that." And he said, and it was funny. We were on a call, and he says, "Well, that's exactly why I picked it."
They actually did.
Nobody's doing it, but they should.
There was a TV series here. I forget the name of it. I think Battle Commanders or something. Time Commanders. That was it. And every week they'd have 2 teams, and they would use the Total War engine to recreate historical battles, and the teams would be controlling but they'd be controlling the opposing armies, and they would have to figure out their strategy, and it was all rendered using the game. And they basically play it on a huge screen in their studio. There's broadcast over TV. That was a fascinating show.
Well, it's amazing to me that for his large scale scenes in this movie that he wasn't using something like that. when I first glanced at it for just a second, I thought, oh my gosh, was he using Ultimate Battle Simulator? But then I realized, nope, not silly enough. Nobody's flying into the air, I really scratched my head at first at like, how did he do that? Because I thought the same way you did, Damien. I thought, man, you can't do that on a normal computer. Not with iClone, not in that way, not as seen. So you're probably right. He got creative with it somehow and layered it in or something. But it's amazing. You don't see it's seamless.
I did something similar with Movie Storm, which big battle like that. And I started thinking, I was thinking about how I did that, and I was looking for signs he did the same way, and I did not see any. And I just used lots of trickery and sort of fake people.
Right.
But no, because I was looking and no, they're all animated. They're not just static images moving along. You can see their legs and arms moving as they're running.
Yeah. Huge amount of work has gone into this. You can tell that for sure.
Really great pick.
Well, we look forward to seeing the next one then, whenever that comes out in the autumn, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a really good pick, Tracy.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Martin Klekner. You did a wonderful job.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that will tie up this episode. So on behalf of myself, Tracy, and Ricky and Damien, thank you for joining us. Be sure to give us some feedback on the website. We have been getting feedback from you, including some people commenting on our comments and in some cases recommending other stuff for us to take a look at. We greatly appreciate that. We're like little kids at Christmas when those arrive. It's fantastic. So keep it coming. We'd love to hear that. The way to feedback to us is over on our website, completelymachinima.com. That's where Tracy also oversees our blog there, which has got additional. We were talking about these layers of content. How did they do it? You'll wonder the same thing when you visit our blog.
Yes.
Because there's so many additional layers of content. It's like, how did they do that?
Yep.
How did they do? We used Tracy to do that. She did that. So, that's the engine. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.